Toyota CEO claims that Tesla is a lot like a restaurant that has a number of recipes, while Toyota is actually serving, has a chef, and it has customers that they're serving regularly. We also take a look at Elon's concern or review of the fact that Tesla was within a month of bankruptcy. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Got a shadow here, trying to fix that. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. Your support helps a great deal to make this channel exist, happen, and work, and is greatly appreciated. We also wanted to note that if you like the show, please take time to like and subscribe. So, one of the sectors that we really enjoy looking at is how technology changes the world. In the case of Tesla, we know that the forward movement of electric vehicles is what I think is a critical deal when it comes to the future and the health of the planet. And if you combine Tesla's solar operations in terms of PG&E and large power implementations, power walls, combined with the vehicles, it's just an awesome combination that lends itself for a huge difference, impact in the planet, which is the main reason why we chose to sort of go this route. Today's show, I think, is one of the most fun parts of covering technology and Tesla for our channel. So over the last, let's say, 5 years, maybe once every 6 months or so, once every year now, we have an executive from one of the major auto companies discuss the fact that, hey, you know, Tesla's a great company, they're doing good things, but for example, in the case of BMW or Audi, they actually make 500,000 cars a day, perhaps, where Tesla's doing 500,000 vehicles a year as the goal right now. So that was one of the comments that had been shared a couple of years ago by the CEO of VW. Our latest iteration of that is a CEO of Toyota, Mr. Toyoda, articulating that, you know, really Tesla has a lot of good ideas, etc. They have a lot of recipes. They don't have a chef, and they don't actually have a large enough base of customers to actually matter. And so he was sort of alluding to the fact that, well, wait a second, it might be a good company, but we service a lot of clients around the world. And in particular, I thought he made this comment focused on the fact that Tesla's market cap is actually now the equivalent of all of the Japanese manufacturers combined. And so I'm not going to say it was sour grapes, but it's fun to see the dialogue between different executives, and they'll make public comments, but the interesting thing about it is there's sort of a back to this in terms of what they're thinking, doing, etc. Now, in the case of Toyota, we find them particularly interesting because if it wasn't for Toyota, Tesla basically wouldn't exist right now. As you probably remember, what happened is that Tesla produced its initial Roadster, and then it was getting ready to try to get rolled towards manufacturing in preparation for more of its initial vehicle, as well as moving on to the Model S. And the factory, the NUMMI factory in Fremont, which had been a joint venture with GM and Toyota, it then went exclusively to Toyota. And it was said that the head of Toyota actually came to the United States and was given a ride in the initial Roadster by Elon Musk. And after driving that vehicle, he elected to not give, but at a very, very low price, sell the Fremont factory to Toyota. And among the reasons why this was done was that at this point, it was decided in the sort of early 2000s that Toyota's direction was going to be towards hydrogen vehicles and avoid going heavily towards electric. And so it didn't matter that they could assist Elon Musk in this manner and therefore sort of the change was made. Now, we were kind of fascinated with this because, as you know, Toyota also went on to produce the Prius in several different iterations and actually moved somewhat heavily into the electric space with that vehicle, and fairly successfully so. Right now, probably 10%, at least in the United States, perhaps 20% of those vehicles that are sold by Tesla are Prius owners that are stepping up to the next level, and probably another 10% are actually folks coming over from the Nissan Leaf camp in order to embrace sort of the Tesla solution. So we were kind of fascinated by this whole thing because there's a huge problem both in Silicon Valley, in Germany, at all the major headquarters around the world that sort of occurred and is rapidly changing right now. And that is that technology is very painful. One of the things I keep watching for is what is the latest thing that computers are going to be able to take over and therefore wipe out more jobs for consumers. And as we've kind of watched this, one of the most fascinating parts of technology is the fact that you have these very large companies that control a certain space, and they're thinking that they have a moat or an ability to protect their niche from inbound competitors in the form of technology. And what the folks in Silicon Valley and other technology capitals of the world have demonstrated time and again is the manner in which you can have an entrenched entity get completely destroyed. And it's almost like they're dying, the company might be dying, but they're not really realizing the danger that they're in until it's kind of too late. So, I mean, Toyota is such a huge company and they do such a great job that I don't think their business will disappear in the near term. But the challenge I see lurking there is that a lot of times, if you look at the history of companies, the trend is that there's an optimization going on in terms of your selection of CEOs that's often driven by parameters associated with why they were successful in the past. So in the US military, what they discuss is that most people are preparing a battle plan for the last war rather than the current or future one, because it's kind of the one you know well. One of the funnest parts of covering Tesla has been a guy named Mr. Johnson, and observing the fact that based on basic accounting models, Tesla actually should be going out of business fairly soon, and he's confident that that will occur. What I found sort of fascinating about this is the fact that if you think about accounting, the accounting sector, they're actually called bean counters. And the reason was that accounting was originally started by, we were told by the Campbell Soup Company, where they would take certain people in order to confirm certain inventories. They would have accountants spread out within the operations of that company and literally count the number of beans that were in those warehouses so they could know exactly, how to value that company, and frankly, in an audit, that everything was legit, that was articulated on the balance sheet. So what's interesting right now is that as you do an analysis on Tesla, there's a how many cars, how many factories, how many everything can you count on Tesla versus how many vehicles are they selling, and then compare similar numbers with the large OEM manufacturers around the world, and you'll find that everybody else has a lot more factories, everybody else has a lot more assets, a lot more cash on the balance sheet. However, if you take a look at the growth rate and consumer trends, you'll find that Tesla has a growth rate that validates the high stock price. And so one of the fun debates, arguments that goes on is bringing Mr. Johnson on to talk about the fact that Tesla is about to go bankrupt and it's worth $87 a share, but consumers are out there buying the vehicles in large numbers, and governments like China, for example, Norway, are aggressively finding ways to move consumers away from fossil fuel driven vehicles and into electric vehicles. And so until everything is switched over, it's very hard for the way accounting works to actually define where certain businesses are going. So great examples of the recent past that I often talk about, for example, are look at what happened to Nokia relative to Apple and Android phones. Nokia was a dominant player around the world, and there was no way you could anticipate or see that there was going to be this big problem that was going to happen that would hamper Nokia's ability to continue into the future. And obviously that changed. And so while, obviously Microsoft bought Nokia and systematically ran them into the ground, and now they really don't exist. There may be a few out there, but they're nothing like they were in the past. And so it's amazing to watch the transitions that occur and why. By the way, a sidebar note on this that definitely impacts Tesla is something that is often called the network effect. So what this is that when Zune, Microsoft's competition for the iPods, came out, they actually designed a feature package that was actually superior to the iPads or iPods. When an executive was asked about it at Apple regarding feature richness of that Zune product from Microsoft, the response was, yeah, I agree, they have some better features than we do on that product. The reason why Zune wasn't adopted hugely was the network effect, the ability of your software and hardware to work together in Apple's ecosystem. There are all these consumer-driven sort of already dones that Microsoft could not break despite developing and delivering a better product. And I really think this is one of the most frustrating portions of how technology changes might occur. You could argue that Tesla does have somewhat of this, ecosystem when you look at, the power walls in your garage, when you look at the infrastructure of charging, etc. And then most importantly, the network effect of the fact that if you're thinking about purchasing a Tesla, there's a high likelihood that you may have a friend or a neighbor that's been driving it and you've been thinking about that vehicle for a while. So there's a way in which the company's established itself that there's still room for competitors to swoop in, but those days are numbered as the footprint of Tesla vehicles in the hands of consumers continues to increase. So the argument that Mr. Toyoda makes of the fact that, Tesla is in a position currently where there are a bunch of recipes and there's no chef, whereas Toyota has a chef in front and they're serving a lot of customers. Accurate assessment. The challenge, though, is that how you view things can be influenced by your training and your background going backwards. And this could actually be a nightmare going forwards for certain companies that have been unresponsive in a strong way to the Tesla threat. So we'll see how this plays out. We want to thank Toyota for all the help that it provided to Tesla, including providing vehicles. An early RAV4 that was electric was designed and put on the street by Tesla for profit. The factory right now in Fremont depends on that relationship. So there's a lot of influential ways Toyota has been a key part of the Tesla miracle. It'll be interesting to see how the relationship between Panasonic and Tesla, or Panasonic and Toyota, develops the new battery technology that they'll be competing with Tesla with going forward. But it's one of the interesting sort of, crazy working relationship issues that are going on. The final thing that we wanted to sort of take a quick glance at is Elon's discussion of 1 month away from bankruptcy when they were just starting up Model 3 production. I have always been fascinated. I've been fascinated over the years as we've learned about Elon, because he kind of enjoys sort of the video game superhero process. And in this case, I was fascinated because when this story initially hit, there was a little teeny weeny issue that he didn't cover when he was describing this superhero circumstance. And that is the fact that right now, based on the land values in Silicon Valley and what you could put there as a best use, the land underneath the Gigafactory in Fremont, we think is worth about $30 billion. And so regardless of what Elon thought about potential bankruptcy, when you consider things like goodwill in the marketplace, the ability to issue shares, when you consider things like the ability to lever up the real estate underneath or do a sale leaseback, or all these different methods that were at his disposal, I just think that I like his thinking when it comes to the whole idea of, oh, we're really close to bankruptcy. But, as some of the analysts like Colin pointed out, yeah, Elon did a self-inflicted sort of but very painful moment as we started Model 3 production, but the chances of this failure, I think, were very low because of the ability to access capital in the marketplace or with other methods. So I'll float with that. The other thing about Elon we found interesting is that there are certain executives that really enjoy challenging engineering problems. And in the case of Tesla, that challenging engineering problems would be things on the table that have to be managed that are challenging is really appealing to Elon. So things like the 420 plan to take Tesla private. If there aren't challenging engineering circumstances going on, he gets kind of bored. And so if they don't already sit on the table, he might invent something that creates a challenge that he has to sort of dive in hands first to solve. And so I'm happy right now because there's so many different builds that are going on in Germany, in Texas, new developments in China, that anytime he wants to take out the boredom button and explore engineering challenges the company is solving, there's plenty on the table right now, so he doesn't necessarily have to invent something to dive into. So our goal of this show was really to dive into the Toyota assessment. Tesla was just a bunch of recipes without implementation. And the thesis we're having is that we all know that there's more to it than just the recipes in terms of vehicles being delivered. Now, when it comes to the number of vehicles being delivered compared to Toyota, you kind of could argue with him a little bit, but still Tesla has delivered a lot of solutions. And if you look at the 100,000 people that have lost their jobs in the German auto business relative to the expansion of Tesla in the US and China and Europe, I think they would disagree that Tesla is simply a bunch of recipes with no chef in the kitchen. At any rate, we want to thank you for taking time out to review our conversation about sort of the Toyota-Tesla conversation. I think it's going to change dramatically in the near term as we head to Toyota bringing out more electric vehicles to compete with Tesla. But we also are hopeful that we get more Teslas on the ground to dominate this network effect we talked about. The final piece of what I wanted to cover today is your health tips. Just a reminder, don't forget 25 leg lifts per leg on a daily basis to strengthen the quad muscles, reducing potential for knee problems. Also wanted to encourage you to consider a 5-2 or another diet. Also wanted to encourage you to not go to bed within 4 hours of eating, minimum 2 hours, let the food digest. And then finally, if you're in the lovemaking space, consider having a very small meal like a salad, because blood flow is required for all activities, both eating and lovemaking activities. And if all the blood flow is to your stomach, it will not be available for those lovemaking activities. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lahitro Hebrew, Hoda Hafez Farsi, Assalamu alaikum, Muslim, Namaste, Hindi, Zdravstvuyte, hello in Russian, and Dobrodzenia. And we want to thank you for joining us once again today. We're at the National Harbor MGM. Wanted to just finish up by giving you guys a view out here. Have a great day. Bye for now. And thanks once again for joining us. This is the Gaylord Convention Center. the Woodrow Wilson Bridge in the distance. Transfer.